BMW used to be known as a top manufacturer of clean and restrained designs on sedans, coupes, and SUVs. Today, their design is best known for something completely different. However, back in 2001, BMW dropped a car that didn't look like anything else in the lineup, a car whose design was influenced by the drop-dead gorgeous BMW 507 of the 1950s, a design that will grow to become more beautiful with each passing decade. The car was, of course, the BMW Z8. It was initially unveiled as the Z07 concept back in October of 1997 at the Tokyo Motor Show, and what a transition this was into production, with very few changes to the overall design. For example, the windshield in the production Z8 was more upright, which I think looks even better and more in line with the vintage Roadsters, and the Z8 had a larger front air intake as well. Another change that had to be made for the production was the Z07's driver's side fairing, which was never intended for production to begin with, and this had to be removed in order to allow for easy operation of the power soft top. One detail I love that BMW kept in the Z8 is the side indicator. A detail I remember thinking was so cool when I first saw it and still is today. So when the indicator is off, you can't tell that it's there. It's a unique design feature that felt like it was ahead of its time. And the same goes for the neon exterior lighting. The taillights and turn signals are powered by neon tubes, which are quicker to turn on than regular light bulbs and should last as long as the car itself. The only place on the car where you can actually find the model name Z8 is not in the rear, but it's in the interior right between the seats. Now, the beautiful flowing lines and Art Deco touches on the Z8 appears to have been taken straight from the page of a car designer's sketchbook. The Roadster was produced from 1998 to 2006 under the code name E52, and it was born under the supervision of Chris Bangle from 1993 to 1995. Henrik Fisker, the man behind automotive sculptures such as the Aston Martin V8 Vantage and the DB9, designed the exterior of the Z8, and Scott Lempert designed the interior. Chris Bangle is best known for his sometimes controversial work as the BMW Group's chief of design, where he was in charge of BMW, Mini, and Rolls-Royce. And during his time, he introduced something called flame surfacing across the entire BMW lineup, with the exception of the Z8. Here's a fun fact about Chris Bangle. The Bangle Butt 7 series was widely criticized for its design when it first came out in 2001, but it actually ended up selling more units than any previous 7 series up until that point, so he knew what he was doing. The BMW Z8 was launched for the 2001 model year. Previous to the launch, it starred as one of the coolest movie cars of all time in the 1999 James Bond film The World Is Not Enough. The Z8 used the E39 M5's 4.9-liter S62 V8 engine and 6-speed manual transmission. It also has a custom-built aluminum chassis and frame, and its entire body was made out of aluminum. A claimed 0 to 62 miles per hour sprint time of 4.7 seconds was based on 395 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. However, later tests dropped that time to the low 4-second range. The top speed was limited to 155 miles per hour, as was the case with most German cars of the time, but you could remove the limiter, and if you did that, you would be able to reach a top speed of 180 miles per hour with a lot of wind in your hair. The Z8 was only available as a soft top, but owners who wanted to use theirs all year could rely on a removable color-matched aluminum hardtop that came standard with each car. It's a rare thing, but the Z8 actually looks almost as great with the hardtop installed as without. You rarely see that when it comes to Roadsters. The interior mirrored the exterior care to attention to detail. It had a clean, well-designed cockpit with nothing in the way that didn't need to be there, like the early infotainment unit, for example, which was hidden behind a retractable panel. Gauges in the middle of the dashboard in a recessed painted plastic panel were a throwback to the days when dashboards were made out of metal. The knobs, switches, and primary touch points were all made of sculpted aluminum. As with most modern collector-grade cars, it's difficult to find a Z8 in poor condition. Most of them have been well taken care of. After a few years of ownership, when values began to rise significantly, most Z8s were kept in the garage for fear of extra mileage or damage, so the market right now is flooded with clean, untouched examples ready to put BMW's 50-year spare parts guarantee to the test. If you can find a Z8 that has seen regular use, the majority of the mechanical components beneath that delicious aluminum skin are off-the-shelf early BMW parts. If you can afford to take care of an E39 M5, for example, your bills for the Z8 shouldn't be much higher from a reputable independent shop, as long as you don't need to replace any custom trim. The first year of production for the BMW Z8 was in 2000, and the last year's production was in 2003, with a total production of 5,703 cars. The fact that BMW made enough Z8s shows how sought after these vehicles were and still are. Out of the 5,700 Z8s produced worldwide, about 2,500 units were sold in the United States, and only 555 Alpina Roadster V8s were built, with 450 of them ending up in the United States. The original price for the Z8 in 2001 was $128,000, and most Z8s today sell for between $150,000 to $250,000, depending on, of course, mileage, condition, and color. The automatic Alpina Roadster V8 sits in the same price range. Because it is such a timeless design, the BMW Z8 is still one of the most beautiful roadsters ever built, in my opinion, even after 2 decades, and I still think this is gonna get even more beautiful as time goes on. Can we just take a minute and really appreciate this Z8 design? I don't know what it is about this car, but I think it's probably top 3 turning an old classic into a modern car. This, to me, even today, even just as it is right here, with the same graphics, same lights, because it still has LED lights, this would still today, if BMW dropped this today, it would be one of the most beautiful cars BMW has ever made. And this is one of these cars that I just want to have on a turntable, just slowly spinning around in my garage, analyzing, taking in all the details and all the lines of this car. It's such a beautiful design, this car. Look at this, for example, this angle in the front end. This is something that we rarely see, because a lot of times in modern cars you can't have an angle like this in the front end because of regulations and stuff. You need to have it lower to the ground and then further out than we have right here, and this creates this very nostalgic looking front end, specifically with these super nice intakes that we have, the BMW kidneys, in a completely new design with the lights integrated here. And you know how I say that I don't like chrome on modern cars, but in this case, this chrome really suits this design, and that again goes back to how it's being in a modern interpretation of the 507 BMW from the 50s. Funny story about this car is, when Henrik Fisker designed this car, it wasn't even meant to be a production car. So Henrik Fisker went down with a bunch of design executives and in the 90s in the south of Europe to drive old vintage cars. And at the time, I think he was employed by BMW, and they drove the 507, and they said, why don't we have a car like this in today's lineup? From that sparked the idea that, okay, maybe we can create a fun, new, modern version of the 507. It was kind of a joke at the time, but then Henrik Fisker, over that summer, he actually worked on this almost by himself as a designer and sketched this up. He had 5 engineers working with him, and that's it. It's a very small team coming up with the idea of the Z8. And then when everybody was back from the holidays and the summer vacations, he showed it to the executives, and they immediately greenlit this design, which I would also do if, just look at it. I mean, who wouldn't greenlight this design? but they had no idea how they were gonna build it, so they had to create an entirely new platform just to build this car. But I'm so thankful that they did, because it turned out to be one of BMW's all-time greats. And the 507, which was created in the 50s, was a really bad financial car for BMW, because all the prices, all the materials, and everything that needed to be used to build the 507, the prices skyrocketed after World War II, and the car became a lot more expensive than what BMW had intended for when they started the development of the 507. But again, thankful that they actually made the 507, because without it, this gorgeous beauty would not exist. So I think the key that we need today is more design executives going to vacations in south of France to drive old vintage cars and look at the design, appreciate the nostalgic feelings and lines that you have in an old car. And I think that could be the solution to the kind of weird designs that we have going on today. It feels like we reached a point, a peak of beauty when it comes to automotive design in the I would say the 50s and the 60s, and from there we have tried so many different things and adding so many different lines and proportions into the cars to find something that looks even more beautiful than that. In my opinion, we haven't reached it. The peak was 60s and 70s, so why not do more projects like this, bringing back a classic in a modern take, just like we have in this absolutely stunning BMW Z8. And I hope one day I will get to own one of these in my garage, have it on a turntable. And I wouldn't even change the wheels. I love these wheels, but then when I look at Z8s with proper looking aftermarket wheels, you know, it makes sense to kind of maybe upgrade the wheels, because it looks almost too much beauty coming at me when I see it with like 20-inch wheels and maybe a little lower than this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.